My name is Ricardo Martinez. I'm Branch Chief for Policy Training and Customer Services in the Procurement Division. I'll be moderating today's event, and today we'll be talking about the special provisions for infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. We were also webcasting this, so we're going to have two microphones on the side. If you have questions, just raise your hand. Somebody will come to you with the mic. We ask you to speak clearly and slowly, state your name and who you represent, and one person at a time. Before we get started, just a couple of things on safety. Should there be a fire alarm, which I hope not, all you need to do is remain calm when the alarm sounds, calmly leave your seat, exit to the back of the auditorium, look for the green exit signs. When you get onto the main floor, monitors will be out there in the emergency vests. Follow the monitors, walk towards the tower bridge on the walkway when you exit the building. Look for the floor sign with the number 1. And we'll wait until all is clear, so they'll allow us to come back into the building. We're a rather small group today. I'm not sure how many people are on the webcast. What I'd like to do very quickly, if I can ask my monitors, if we can quickly just get a sense of who's here and what companies or state departments are represented here today. So if you could state your name and who you represent today to get an idea, and then we will get started. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Monica Hopelian from Microsoft.
Hi, Danielle Canellis from Department of Technology.
Jennifer Herrera, Department of Technology.
Katie Sanborn, Department of Technology.
Wendy Crow, Amazon Web Services.
Jane Lacey, Amazon Web Services.
Rob Grossklauser with Amazon Web Services.
Mark Fellows, Oracle.
Nate Merrill, Deloitte.
Rick Collins, Unisys.
Gilbert Pelayo with DSI.
Todd McNamara, Salesforce.com.
Good morning, I'm Sam Savinovich with C&G Technology Services.
Lori Tomito with Department of General Services.
Good morning, Eric Mandel, Department of General Services.
Christine Friends, SHI.
And up on our panel we have?
I'm Rhonda Smith. I'm with the Department of General Services, and I'm the CMAS Program Manager.
Good morning, Rick Goldberg, DGS Legal.
All right, so we will be taking also questions from our webcast as well as from the audience. What we want to do here today, we have 3 hours set aside to go over several of the topics in the special provisions. Some will require not a whole lot of time, while others, I believe, will require a significant amount of time. It is my hope to keep us on track and to get us out of here with obtaining your perspectives that would lead us then to provide a final product that could be published sometime in June. Okay? There are some topics that may come up that we will be unable to address here today, so I apologize in advance. Those will be reserved to be discussed at a future date. So on that note, I'd like to start off with infrastructure as a service. Let me change screens here. And we received your comments, so if I can ask, what we don't want to do today is for you to repeat the comments that we've already received from you in writing. We already have those. I think what we want to hear from you today is any other issues that have come up. What I will do is open it up to the panel to get a perspective from them, and then we can open dialogue. So again, once you have decided to speak, please raise your hand, and one of the microphone people will bring you the microphone so you can speak. So the first item that we want to discuss today is under infrastructure as a service, under definitions, the letter L, and we are projecting that on to the screen. So I will go ahead and open it up to the panel. L as in loud.
Next page, please.
I should have brought my glasses on. There it is, right there. Sir, okay?
Good morning, everybody. Just as a sort of level setting, restating the obvious, what DGS has done is it has taken the template from the best practice guide put out by the Center for Digital Government, and that is the basis for our draft provisions for infrastructure as a service, which I'm going to call ISAS, and platform as a service, which I'll call PaaS. And this question that we have up here is really directed to you, Christine. Good morning. We are in possession of comments from SHI in particular, made comments as a reseller, and one of the things that we understand is the potential disconnect between applying these provisions to a contractor as well as to what the template that Center for Digital Government used, which was service provider, which included contractor and affiliates and agents. One of the questions that we have actually for SHI in particular, and opening it up to everyone else, is rather than creating a whole new set of provisions for resellers, saying this applies, this doesn't apply, is there a way to change the definition of service provider in a way that would address the reseller situation versus contractor? Would changing the definition, for example, of service provider to mean the contractor and its employees and somehow address the reseller relationship, would that be sufficient rather than changing each and every provision or having a different set of provisions for resellers?
Well, I
Can
do have...
you state your name and who you represent?
Christine French with SHI. I do have a colleague that's on the WebEx today who actually is in the ownership of these terms and conditions, so I don't want to speak on behalf of our legal representation there. As far as whether we're in acceptance of something like this, I would have defer to her to have her respond in writing back to you. However, it is important that we do have as broad of a definition as possible. I would hope that it would be in the state's best interest to accept that as well, so that we can open up the competition to as many folks that can serve the state in this way for infrastructure, as well as platform, or even moving backwards to the software terms and conditions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers your question, but I'd have to defer.
Okay. And just to be clear, the software as a service, those provisions are not up for discussion today. That preceded the template, and we're putting that to a later date. We're trying to get these through first because we've already got software special provisions up and running. Does anyone else have any comments on this definition or addressing the reseller issue? Now, we used service provider because, frankly, that's what the template used. Most of our provisions generally have used contractor. This definition is pretty broad, we thought, but we do understand the perspective, and we'll try and take that into account as we finalize these.
Right, and is it safe to say that this language is the same on infrastructure as it is on platform?
Yeah, we should set that up. There are really only 3 provisions. We're going to talk about infrastructure, but frankly, the same comments apply. If there are situations where you folks think, no, the language should be different, then say so. But as far as we could tell, there were only 3 provisions that were different. One was in Section 5, one was in Section 10, and one was an additional Section 21, which frankly is something that we're probably going to remove because we've already got language in the general provisions that says you have to abide by all laws. So the need to call out accessibility separately seems unnecessary to us. So what our plan today is we're going to talk about the infrastructure comments primarily to the extent, but those comments will also apply to pass as well. And to the extent that someone wants to differentiate, please feel free to say so as we go through.
Christine, can we get a microphone over here to Christine French?
So Rick, does that mean that you are going to revisit this, the language that was submitted as for consideration as far as expanding on this, or are you saying that you believe that service provider reaches to all definitions? Because we did provide some additional language to consider. So you are still under.
Yes, that's still under consideration.
Okay,
We're not tossing out anybody's. Well, let me backtrack on that. That language is still under consideration.
Great, thank you.
Okay, if there are no other comments, then we'll move to the next topic. Which is number 9, item number 9, background checks.
I can start. Okay, on this one, we had gotten some comments from some of our justice agencies and had requested that perhaps fingerprinting be included in this background check. And we were wondering what industry standards were out there for as far as background checks on their staff. Anybody would like to contribute any comments to that?
You have a comment over here?
We basically got 2 comments from DOJ. They wanted to know whether or not we should include fingerprint checking and whether or not the language regarding criminal background checks should explicitly reference state and federal. Frankly, it seemed to us that if you're doing a criminal background check, you're already doing that. But I'm seeing nodding of heads. But the other thing that came to mind on our end was to what extent, if any, the ban the box type of situation where, other than in situations having to do with fraud, you're supposedly not asking questions about felony backgrounds, whether or not that has any implications in this language at all, from your perspective.
I think we had a comment right over here, right?
So my comment was going to be directed towards the fingerprint question. I mean, from our perspective, background checks, criminal background checks would absolutely be standard, but not fingerprint checks.
Okay, and your name and
Todd McNamara with Salesforce.com.
Thank you. Did you want to provide a comment? Any other comments on this? Okay, I'll turn to my panelists. Anything else on this?
So as far as that goes, just a clarification, if it were something for one of our Department of Justice or CHP, or that could be included as a statement of work item, that it be required, and you would be accepting of that. Okay.
All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is item number 10, access to security logs and receipts. And there is a difference in the letter A between the platform as a service and infrastructure as a service. I will go ahead and ask the panel to comment on that.
Well, we do remember the discussions that we had in advance of the software as a service special provisions, and there was a lot of discussion about security logs and access to security logs. This language, I believe, originally came from mostly the template, I believe, and that's why there was a difference in terms of infrastructure having 2 provisions and platform having just 1. But I guess the issue, and this is from 20,000 feet from somebody who's, I speak techie, but I'm not a techie. It seemed to us that very, very high level, that there are kind of three issues when it comes to security that we could get reports on. One is pings, right? You guys get pinged thousands of times a day. We don't want those records because, nothing happens. They're just pings, they're attempts, nothing happens. We would be deluged with reports of the, just like you're deluged with pings. Then it seems to us there are the gaps, the vulnerabilities that show up where, oh, here's a potential problem. And then there are the data breaches. The thing about just finding out about data breaches is that they're all retroactive. To the extent that we could find out about the gaps as well, that would be, that would be something that would be helpful so that and that's kind of the basic idea of the difference between finding out about security incidents and finding out about data breaches. Security incident, oh, here's an opening, here's a gap, here's a vulnerability where something could happen, and data breach, here's something that did happen. So in that, so let me stop there and just say, would that be, simplistic? That's the way that we're looking at this, and so when we talk about what we want, ideally, as a default position for special provisions, obviously things can be added, in SOWs or SLAs. We don't want the pings. We do want to know about gaps, and obviously we want to know about data breaches. What is that, how does that conform to your business model with the private sector and your model in terms of providing security reports or logs to other governmental agencies?
We'll open it up for comment. No comment? I want to retract, and we have a delay with the webcast. Oh, we do have a comment? We'll go ahead and do the comment then.
Just a quick observation on the data breach responsibilities. How does that differentiate between the two? That you have a section 6 on data breach responsibilities. You were talking about data breach and combining that with this clause.
Well, the difference is between 5 and 6, the security incident and the data breach. Well, what 10 is supposedly doing, I mean, security incident is, like I said, we're asking that you inform us of the security incident, and that is defined in the definitions as, potentially unauthorized access versus data breach, which means unauthorized access that results in essentially loss of data. So that's why we have different provisions for that. The question that we're looking to is whether or not the template language for access to security logs and reports is that overbroad? Is it sufficient? Is it something that meets with the industry's concerns about, we heard loud and clear when we were doing software as a service, we don't want to jeopardize the integrity of your business model, overshare security information, in a multi-tenant situation, that sort of thing. But we're hoping that the language from the template is sufficiently tailored to make that doable.
Thank you. Jane Lacey with AWS. I think certainly from our perspective, keeping it really clear about security incidents and security breaches, as the Republic document tried to address, and this document does address both of those items. I think from our perspective, in just providing infrastructure, our comment was around being a little more specific in this. Are you wanting the service provider to provide those reports, or are you going to state that in an SOW? Certainly an infrastructure provider has log reports for the users to pull on their own. That's not, again, that's the shared responsibility. So as far as the language goes, the logs are there for you to get as the customer. And totally understand your point about you're wanting to proactively be looking at those logs so that you can be doing that security, check on your on proactively versus reactively. So just the suggestion about probably being a little more clear as to who's going to provide those reports. And of course, from our perspective, we would appreciate as an industry standard from an infrastructure provider that it be you, the customer, go and get those reports as they're provided for by the infrastructure provider.
Any other comments on this section? Okay, we did have one come in over the webcast on number 9, so I'm going to retract, and we're going to go to number 9 right now. Okay, go ahead, Bernie.
Well, we actually have two,
Okay.
and I'll take them not in the order they came in, but in the order that we started with them. And the first comment is from Natalie Slowick of SHI. Regarding the first question, the intention was to change the definition so we don't require a separate set of terms and conditions for resellers. If we can delineate SHI's responsibilities, which would be to flow down the terms to the service providers, then we would work off this set of terms and conditions. Our other changes are in line with that approach. Hopefully this addresses the question. We'll be happy to discuss more in depth. The second question was regarding the criminal background checks, and it kind of reiterates what's already been said. It comes from Matthew Keck of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Company. Vendors do not use fingerprint checking as a routine matter. There may be situations where a particular XAAS offering is limited to certain employees. This would be more restrictive scenario like a government-only XAAS offering. A standard background check would cover federal and state.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're ready to move on to item number 12, data center audit. If I can ask the panel to comment on that.
I think this was the issue of. So we'd just like to get a better understanding of the SOC2 audits. It was our understanding from when we went around the first time with software as a service that most companies were doing SOC2 audits. So we'd like a little bit more information on this issue, if anybody has any comments.
We'll take that as a no. Can we move on to the next one then?
Well, let me just say one thing, make sure that everyone is clear that and sees we're looking for redacted versions. We're obviously not looking for the full audit. Again, we're not looking to jeopardize anybody's integrity of their security system or anything like that. It is upon request, that obtaining a redacted version of the audit report and your correction plan is upon the request of the state. Yes.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Question regarding the SOC to our industry partners. Hasn't that actually been replaced with a different audit report, SAE or something like that instead of SOC? What audits are you actually performing?
SOC2 is SSAE.
So,
yeah.
So if we're saying one term, everybody knows it's the same as SAE2?
There are different levels of SOC report,
right.
But that's all within the SSAE framework, SSAE 16 framework.
So we don't need to clarify that?
This is Jane Lacey with AWS. We certainly offer SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. We offer the SSAE. I think be careful when you start naming them, because just as soon as you get it printed, right, industry standard will change the name or something, right? So I think if you can come up with the common language of third-party audits that are conducted on a regular cadence. Ours are conducted every 6 months to annually, depending on the particular audit. But it's the third-party audit on a regular cadence. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Certainly, those are today's standards, and probably everybody in the room has that. But
So I'm wondering if we need to do, start with this one as the level setter, or its successor or replacement, something like that. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that.
All right, can we go to the topic number 13? This is change control and advance notice.
So we know there are different business models for different companies as to how change occurs. Some change obviously is planned well in advance. Some is regular on a pattern. Some is, in response to, a worm or something else, a virus, something that has hit and everybody needs to scramble to change. And we do have, language in here that is, sets forth that this can be adjusted in the SOW and the SLA. My recollection, and this is going back to the land of software, is that there was some language difference between what you called an upgrade and other language system changes. I think the template tried to include all of that as best as they could, and we've imported that into this, and especially the language that says it usually includes a new version number, so we're generally talking about 1.0 to 2.0 versus 1.0 to 1.1. Wanted to make sure that this language is sufficient and isn't either hampering anybody's activities. Obviously, we're talking about doing things on a regular basis. We've got maintenance downtime, obviously, accounted for elsewhere. Is this, the advance notice, the change control, sufficient, or does anybody have any heartburn about it?
in 13, Jane from Amazon again, in an infrastructure provider, I can certainly see this in a SaaS provider. You have SLAs, you bring out the new version of the software. Absolutely, that makes sense. But from an infrastructure provider where scale, agility, flexibility, our whole goal as an infrastructure service provider is so that you don't have to worry about the midnight upgrades and the changing out of the hardware that's gone end of life. That's the whole premise behind that, and to keeping it going at scale. The service runs the same way for every customer across the globe. If we were to provide the state of California notice and stop everything to do that, that impacts a worldwide customer. Certainly our goal is to not have you impacted at all. And thus we put SLAs in place to ensure that the state is taken care of should something happen in that instance. But this would certainly hinder us to provide services in the way that we provide services to all our customers.
So to follow up on that, the language, I think we've got an out, as it were, in the language, in that it says, to address that, because it talks about the service provider shall give advance notice as agreed to by the parties and included in the SOW and our SLA. In that instance, thinking like a lawyer, I can't help it.
Yep.
You can obviously say in what instances you will or in what instances you won't. provide that notice.
Yes, I would agree. We did provide just a slight tweak on that language, but generally, yes, thank you.
Any other comments on this topic? Topic number 13. If we continue at the pace we're going, we're going to get out of here pretty quick.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing. Okay, next item is item number 15, non-disclosure and separation of duties.
Frankly, this comes from the template, and we're a little stumped. Why is this here? I mean, just reading it out loud, the service provider shall enforce separation of job duties, require commercially reasonable non-disclosure agreements, including those that may be required by the state, and limit staff knowledge of state data to that which is absolutely necessary to perform job duties. I mean, some of that seems like your pretty standard language, in the sense of if someone was looking at the data, which I know in most cases you're not supposed to be doing as the infrastructure or platform provider, then those who can versus those who can't. This seems like a no-brainer in terms of the language. So are we missing something on this, or is this just vanilla language?
Here we have a comment up in front.
Rick Collins from Unisys. I guess what I would suggest is that this clause will give our legal department heartburn every time related to the enforced separation of job duties. And we'll be coming back with a comment every time saying these need to be specified, which jobs, which duties, how separated, and that sort of thing. So I guess I'd say this is a fairly broad-reaching kind of a requirement that's going to give us a substantial amount of concern that will then require a whole lot of more detail at each and every contract. So I would tend to agree with you that I'm not sure why this is all here.
Jane with AWS, we concur. It doesn't really, it doesn't belong in this set of terms from our perspective.
Any other comments? Well, I think those were the 6 topics that we wanted to discuss today. I'm going to turn to the panel and ask them, how do you want to tie this up? And I can talk about next steps after we talk about how we're going to end today.
Well, I did want to make sure that everyone saw that on the past provisions, I alluded to it earlier, what had been provision 21, the compliance with accessibility standards, that we were going to take that language out because we already have language in the IT general provisions that says, contractors shall comply with all statutes. Other than that, I guess I would open it up. Since we have...
About the ones that we deleted, this one?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, one of the other ones that we had questioned that was in the template was the strategic business partner disclosure. We weren't sure that from the state standpoint that we needed to include that. Does anybody have any comments about number 18? Or why that might have been in the template?
Yes, my comment would be having no idea why it would be in the template, because we'd agree that it's don't really understand what the objective would be that the state would be served.
We want to talk about 21.
Well, I think that if you choose to expand the definition of contractor, or service provider to contractor, then this might be important to have because you would want to have the strategic business partners disclosed as subcontractors.
Okay, now we're gonna open it up. No, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Rick Collins with Unisys again. On that topic, I think this is a fairly dynamic or volatile area that is changing for all of us as the industry moves forward and the technologies move forward and the partnering that we go through moves forward. So I guess it would be helpful for us to understand what it is that you're trying to get at here that is helpful for the state or protective for the state in terms of understanding all of our strategic business partners related to a line of service that may not even be applicable to the state work that is being done under this contract. So I guess I hate to say we don't need this because I'm not sure I understand what the intent of the state is, but certainly from our standpoint, this would be changing regularly and quickly, and the kind of administrative processes that would require would be fairly extensive. And when you have global companies, which you are dealing with here in the room and with these services, we may have strategic business partners in different geographies that we don't necessarily know in those geographies these requirements in the state of California. So it's often difficult for us to try and adhere to one of these when we've got operations running around the world, and yet we have a specific indication here in one area that is looking for all of our strategic business partners. So I guess I'm saying it's difficult to adhere to, not sure what the intent is, but if that could be made more clear, maybe we could have other valid comments.
Jane with AWS again. These were taken from the digital government, right? So I was a part of that panel, and we started out with the state of Delaware's terms, cloud terms, and sort of parsed through them as best we could in a 3-day session. We really took 13 of the however many clauses that were a part of that agreement initially and took deep dive on them. At the end of the session, there were obviously other clauses that we just honestly didn't, as a vendor community and state community, go into any further. And I think they felt, when they finally put the final submission together, well, geez, that doesn't seem harmless. Let's just stick it in there, see if anybody notices or cares. This was one that obviously we didn't deep dive on. We stuck to the heavier topics. But so that's how I think it got here, because we certainly didn't address it as a, why would you not want to do that? So I agree with Rick's comments. It doesn't really, it can apply in certain situations, but in an infrastructure environment where you're providing the services globally, same way to every customer, it's going to be very challenging to be able to provide what this is asking for, if at all. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Well, those were great comments. Do we want to open it out now, panel members? So we're going to go ahead and open it up. Are there any topics that you would like to bring forward to discuss on either one of these special provisions?
Sorry, taking more than my time. Jane here. On the very front page where you talk about a statement of work and a service level agreement, I just want to confirm with you or ask so that we don't mix nomenclatures and definitions, because we look at an SLA as a service level agreement, meaning if the service doesn't work the way we said it would, the SLA applies. But I'm asking, Rick, from your perspective, were you meaning an SLA to be an actual service agreement that we could tack on to these cloud provisions to address other items?
From our perspective, and Rhonda, correct me if I'm wrong, the service, the contract, and you've seen this with our order of precedence, the contract is the most important in the order of precedence in terms of the general provisions. These are seen as special provisions. The statement of work is essentially, the agreement of the parties as to what specifically is going to be done, and from very high level, the SLA is seen by us as sort of the technical agreement in terms of how each of these tasks, responsibilities are going to be carried out, sort of the specifications.
Okay.
That's the way we see the SLA.
Okay, thank you.
Any other topics that the audience may have? Then we're way ahead of schedule. We can go play hooky now, right? Rick?
Anything else from the web?
Nothing from the web. So one last chance. Oh, we have a comment here.
Hi, Jennifer Herrera with Department of Technology. This question is more for state government, more or less. But with the statement of work and the SLA, I know a lot of things are supposed to be specified in there. Will there be templates that you're going to put together for the departments to utilize for those? Because I know a lot of departments maybe don't have access to that, or they ask other departments to borrow from them. So I'm just curious if you're going to have a template of some sort for them to utilize versus a vendor-supplied template when it comes to SLA.
I think we have an answer out in the audience.
Katie Sanborn, Department of Technology with Statewide Technology Procurement Division. So I know that the new project approval lifecycle group is putting together guidelines for statement of works, and that should be forthcoming soon. They have a draft and they're vetting it and whatnot. As for the SLAs, I don't know if they're going to do guidelines for that, and it's not really producing a template, but just a guideline and things to think about for putting in your SOWs, things to put in your SOWs. So that will be forthcoming and published on the website at some point.
Thank you. My question, I think, is more with the SLAs. We've had several departments come to us and ask us for samples or what they should be putting in. So I guess my fear is more with other state agencies who maybe don't have the experience, that they're going to rely solely on vendors to provide those things to them without really looking at what risks there are to the state. So I'm wondering if from a DGS standpoint, if they're going to put something out to give them some guidelines around that.
Yeah, this sounds like a little bit of a policy question and a training question, which falls under my branch. So I would tell you, yes, anything new like this, just like with Fiscal, we've structured a curriculum and modules that we can then go out and either teach through a webinar or in class. So to answer your question, yes, it sounds to me like there's going to be a need to develop some kind of training. So yes, we would do that in collaboration with the CMAS unit.
But to address your concern head on, I think we understand that coming out with, just like the general provisions, coming out with the special provisions, we understand, this much of the industry, and the agencies out there will understand less, and that's the idea is to provide a default language that could then be addressed in the SOW, the SCLA. But the very next step for a contracting agency is, yeah, great, but if I don't have that technical expertise, there's a real chance I could get snookered in those documents, and we understand that, and that, I think, is still on our to-do list. The idea being, let's get the special provisions in place, and then let's work on what, if anything, we can either create ourselves or obtain elsewhere in terms of other templates or other states that have model SOWs or SLAs, and see if we can put that together, as well. I think that's to be continued.
And if you go to our cloud webpage, there are samples of SLAs on there, right?
Can I ask about number 20, the disaster recovery? I just want to clarify, obviously we provided comments from AWS, but as an infrastructure provider, this one is really near and dear to us because of the shared responsibility model, and again, the service is working the same for everyone across the globe. and how in the shared responsibility, the customer has certain responsibilities to security. I just wanted, were there any questions in regards to the comments around that? Is that understood by the state? How the services work when it comes to just infrastructure versus possibly SaaS or a managed service?
We have looked at number 20, and the way we're going to handle it is probably to delete the A through C statements in there and just leave the introductory paragraph.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Because we looked at it and we said, this just doesn't fit this model.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other topics? Going once. Oh.
Apologies. Rob Grosscloser with AWS. There's a phrase that's used kind of intermittently. The phrase I'm referring to, for example, is on number 6 under data breach responsibilities, where it says, unless stipulated otherwise in the SOW and or the SLA, up above and 5 in the security.
Yeah, we're getting to that. We realized as we were going back through this that wasn't our standard language for our general provisions, and so stipulated could have legal meanings. No, we're going to go back to our old language of unless otherwise set forth in the SOW or SLA.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, looks like there are no other topics. Then on behalf of DGS, we want to thank you for coming today. Our target is to have these maybe finished and published sometime in June. Okay. As always, we always welcome the opportunity to dialogue with our stakeholders. So on behalf of our director and our deputy director, Dan Kim and Jim Butler, we thank you very much for today. Be safe out there today because it's raining.